Alrighty then, you know what time it is. Welcome to the Online Prosperity Show. And this is the number one place where we unpack the real stories, the strategies, and the mindsets that go behind people who actually turn a struggle into scalable success. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga. And if you've maybe ever felt stuck between working hard and actually seeing consistent revenue, then this episode is definitely for you, because today's guests actually help CEOs and founders to stop guessing and actually start building predictable sales pipeline with confidence, clarity, and also high performing teams. And trust me, this is one of those conversations that I know you're going to want to share with a friend who's maybe just grinding in their business but not seeing the growth that they actually deserve. So I want you to make sure that you are subscribed first, because we just don't talk success here. We actually reverse engineer it all. Now, I'm really excited about the episode that we are about to jump into today. Dipti, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good morning, Prosper. I'm so excited. I'm
Absolutely.
loving the energy already.
Oh, well, from what I've heard, and we had a conversation before, I really had to come prepared, because you talk sales, right? And I know what sales is like for a lot of people. It sounds like, walking into a minefield, but you've actually mastered it. And I can't wait to jump into what that looks like, and how you've actually secured, a career in doing what other people would rather have their eyeballs scratched than actually stand in front of people trying to do a bit of a sales. Now, for those that are watching right now or listening, obviously in this episode, we're going to be diving into what really happens maybe when you leave corporate certainty for your own entrepreneurial ventures, and also the hidden fears behind revenue growth that not a lot of people talk about. And we're also going to be talking about how to actually build a sales engine that actually works without the fluff, the scripts, or the guesswork. Because Dipti just doesn't teach sales. Guess what she does? She builds confidence in CEOs so they can actually lead a revenue, not chase it. Now, Dipti, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified to talk about. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you actually ended up in the world of sales.
Absolutely. I love talking about myself. But thank you for the lovely, warm introduction. And when we say sales, it does bring those butterflies in our tummies. So to give you a bit of my background, I am raised in a family of, two kids. I'm being the elder daughter and my brother, younger brother. And my dad had a business. So I have been groomed in a very business focused family where we all had a role to play. My dad taught me banking when I was in year four. I would go to the bank to cash checks, count the cash. Back in the days, there was a lot of cash transactions and whatnot, but a lot of conversation at home was all around customers and value proposition and with a commercial angle. But a natural flow was about building relationship. It was about helping others. So those were, I think, my early foundations. Having said that, I think I also say that a lot what I am today is a result of the parenting, the upbringing, because my parents have groomed me into being a strong, smart young woman, where my mother taught me two lessons, important ones, which she kept reiterating all the time. And they were, one was self-confidence, and second was financial independence, because my mother believed that anywhere, any part of the world you go, these are the two strengths you're going to carry, and that's how you're going to stand tall. You're not going to be afraid. So, having had those in my background, fast forward, while I was studying in the university, I got a job, and that was in a marketing company to assist telecom businesses. So I was assisting account managers, BDMs, as they would run a physical sales campaign or an expo in the corporate. So I would go assisting them to sell SIM cards. So that got me attracted towards sales. And I love walking into those big boardrooms, having those meetings with really senior people and decision makers. It was fascinating. I think those were the seeds that helped me kind of navigate towards sales journey. So this was back in India where I started in sales roles. I moved up the ladders, being ambitious, but also being someone who really nailed at achieving my targets. And fast forward, then we decided to migrate to Australia. So when we moved to Australia, I had to again start from scratch, selling burgers in Oportos and then finding jobs. Finally, again, navigating through different roles of account manager, BDM, then moving up as team leaders, managers, and then further into the role of director of sales. Now, at that point, what happened was I was tapped onto my shoulder to say that, hey, Dipti, come into a business where we are struggling with the real foundations. We need someone who understands the lengths and breadths, not just achieving targets. So I played a critical role in building the foundations of the sales structure, laying the bones, the blueprint, hiring teams, coaching, mentoring them, setting up sales processes, and then driving those into meaningful conversations, setting up targets, commission structures, eventually helping the business achieve sales targets of 120%. So this has been my journey. And when in 2023, I decided to quit my corporate career to take a break. And then I decided, okay, what do I do next? I have to play on my strengths. So a bit of soul searching that helped me really identify my area of specialization, which is sales. So that got me to starting Sales Pandit Consulting, which I have been running for the last 2 years.
Absolutely.
So that's my journey so far.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us through all of that, because this just really sheds a light, into, the kind of person that you are and how it all sort of started. So you did mention that your dad was a person. What sort of business was he involved in?
He had a chemical business, so he did chemicals for as raw materials for other businesses. So he had a manufacturing plant, but it was sort of a small size where he had to play multiple roles of running a business, selling, meeting customers as such, and yeah, end to end.
Absolutely. So this would have given you a really good exposure into, what sales actually is. And you did mention the relationships that actually happen, because in manufacturing, there's suppliers, there's also, the actual customers. And you did say you were involved in the banking of, day-to-day transactions. That meant you would have been able to talk to people at a very sort of early age. But in families like this, there's always some sort of an expectation for the kids to also go on and be doing have their own sort of livelihood or inherit what the parents would have created. Was there such an expectation in your family there, Dipti?
To some extent, I would say it was not clearly articulated by my dad, but my dad's history or our family history as such, we all have had businesses. Like my grandfather had a business. He was in partnership with his brother, and they ran like a massive business, winning awards. But my dad has been rebellious. He decided to not follow his father. He started his own business. So my dad was quite okay to give me the freedom to choose my career path. Having said that, I was involved in my dad's business for a few years. So somewhere there was an expectation that I would probably hold the reins and run his business. But I think I was way too independent. I wanted to enjoy the corporate life. I think being in the business family, it's like the grass is greener on the other side and opposites attract. So corporate life was sort of giving me a bit more calling. And I think when you are into something, when you're living a life, you don't really realize, you just feel everything's normal. You don't look that as a business and I'm, actually getting groomed in running a business and entrepreneurial journey. For me, this is day to day. Today, when I look back and I introspect, then I can connect the dots and really say, okay, this level of confidence came into me because my parent pushed me to, to the banking or have these conversations with a client. Or I think what at the year 8, year 9, I was actually having meetings with his clients, even some of his vendors, actually being in those meetings along with my dad. And my dad would have some brainstorming sessions with me. I mean, I was too young, but he was comfortable in taking my inputs. So those have been some of the natural elements which you don't realize, but you realize after you've actually moved out of it.
As they say, fish don't see the water that they swim in up until they've been.
Yeah, that's the right analogy. I've never heard that one. This is good.
No, absolutely. But if you look at it from that sort of vantage point, did you also maybe then put certain levels of expectations to or apply yourself, since you were, like you're saying, being the rebel? Because if you then would have gone into that corporate world and it didn't work out, then obviously people were going to be looking at you with, large eyes, saying you could have just continued with what we had here.
No, I don't think so. Because somewhere the environment in my home has been about giving freedom and letting the person do what they believe and feel is, rather than having that external pressure from parents to do what parents want. I think I had a lot of freedom, and I think that has always worked to my advantage. So I've never felt or had that pressure. My parents have always known me to be someone who's just going to, she needs to be given the wings and she'll fly and she'll find her path. I've always been groomed like that. So I think for me, that was never a pressure. There was never a pressure to go back.
Absolutely. Now, in families like that as well, you did mention you've got a sibling who comes pretty much after you. Do they also turn out, the way that the family would have, groomed, like you keep saying, or, how are they doing, with their life?
Yeah, my brother has been closely working with my dad in his business. But today, my dad has sort of sold his business, and my brother is independent, running his own.
Absolutely. So the apple didn't fall that far from the tree, especially in that sort of respect, right?
We picked it up, I think,
Right.
from a father. He chose to like not follow his own father. So I think probably that was somewhere, in the blood.
Absolutely. One of the things that you also mentioned was mom taught you two things, which is confidence and also financial independence. And so many other kids don't have that platform to start off with because the parents themselves are going through somewhat of their own struggles, their own traumas, and they're doing the best with the information that they have. How important is that, not necessarily speaking in your own respect, but to have parents that actually give you a starting board that you can then elevate and propel yourself?
I think as parents, you need to play two roles. One is to actually sort of be that guide and mentor, showing a path to your kids, but also telling them what to do. Okay. For example, if I tell a kid, oh, you got to study, but the kid actually is challenged with focusing or paying attention or concentration. So the kid will not do what the parent is asking. But as a parent, if you tell them, this is how you do things, this is how you pay attention, that's when the kid is going to pick up. So this is what exactly what my mother did. And there was a time in our lives when my dad was seeing a lot of downfall in his business. Things were not going the way he wanted. A lot of the global economy issues had impacted his business and money wasn't coming in. So there was a time when my mother guided me to say, look, you're playing badminton, you're doing your studies, you're having all of these expenses. And if you want to sustain the lifestyle that you have to, you need to start earning. But she also taught me how to. So from year 10, when I was in year 10, she showed me a path and she said, look, there are lots of young kids in the neighborhood and they need a little tutor, right? And you are the eldest sort of in this neighborhood. Just maybe go talk to a few parents, see if they're happy to send their kids. And that's what I did. I used to tutor young children with maths and some studies, and the parents were happy. So it was more of pocket money for me, but that took care of my expenses back then. So it taught me a valuable lesson. One is if you don't have money, you don't cry about it, but you actually go explore what are the different avenues and opportunities to earn money. And when you have money, and it's also what I say as economics that play, because you've got that little money and you've got expenses with your own self. How do you adjust that money? So I think a lot of financial lessons I learned early in my life. So for me, while parents are telling the kids, teaching them, giving them lessons, parents should also play a role in showing them the path of how to do it.
Absolutely, because it's, in the formidable ages, from like 0 to 7, where most of our beliefs and the systems that we actually operate on as adults are formulated during that time. And if you don't have the right guides, it would take a lot of time for you to actually catch up and be a regulated adult. Now, obviously, you rebelled and then went on and spent about 2 decades in corporate sales. And you were involved, from what you're saying, marketing and a telecom business and things of that nature. Now, if you can just give us a cross section of what a day would look like for you in those roles, and it doesn't have to be linear. We just wanted to see what sort of stuff you were involved in that would have then helped you grow into the person that you are today.
So, Prosper, I have always been in B2B enterprise sales, always working with large enterprise customers. And as I mentioned to you earlier in our chat, that working alongside with some of these BDM account managers in the telecom space. So my first job was actually as a relationship manager in telecom company. That was sort of my full-time role. So I absolutely loved what I did. So going, meeting these contacts, building relationships, but importantly, looking at where those opportunities sat, bringing those opportunities in, working with internal teams to, go with proposals. So this continued for a long time. So a typical day would be finding out, looking at most importantly what my portfolio is, identifying opportunities, building the rapport, conversations, identifying where the hardships were, because not everyone is good to talk to. Some clients were really difficult. So how do you really break the ice? How do you go about identifying, the opportunities, but also making a segue and actually building your own portfolio? So there's a lot of things about sales that you don't learn in your formal education. Like if you look at, we don't have a formal education in sales. We don't have a bachelor's or master's. You learn a lot either because you have a passion, you're good in communication, you're good in relationship building. A lot that you learn is through your own journey by finding solutions your way. Also, you learn if you have a good mentor or a good coach. So, in some jobs, I was fortunate to have some really good bosses who did guide me. Also, coupled with some training. So, some businesses had good training formats and coaching. So, I would always look forward to what those were, and being like an absolute sponge, sucker for knowledge, always wanting to challenge myself. And fast forward when I moved to leadership roles, I think things changed a bit. I became a team leader of a global team who sold into enterprise. At the age of, I think I was 27 or 28, and everyone in my team was very senior to me. So for me, without having that education of how do you become a manager, how do you lead teams, I was already in that role. So again, a lot of learning happened through, my experiences and looking at the bosses and the culture of the business. Fast forward when I moved to Australia, I think it was a huge cultural shift in terms of how customers in Australia respond, how they behave, how they adapt. What are the things that I had to unlearn versus what I had to learn? So there was a lot of learning. But importantly, what I really enjoyed is, exploring what am I good at and constantly, learning and upskilling myself, constantly looking for mentors who could give me some guidance. Because I always wanted to climb the ladders, but if you have to prove yourself in another country, especially if you come as a migrant, someone who doesn't exactly speak the same tone, has a different accent. And I feel as a woman, you're also trying to adjust to what typically people see as a perception of, a white car salesperson selling, trying to fit in the box, but yet trying to be different. So there is a lot of navigation, a lot of challenges which I felt I had to go through. I had to really go and convince people that I'm good in sales just because with the perception I had to fit in. But I think when it gets to numbers, the good thing about sales is you can actually show your performance in tangible numbers. When you're meeting your targets and you're 258% of your sales target, your work is proving for you. So the whole concept of perception just goes out of the window because your performance has proven. And that is how things worked with me. That gave me that self-confidence that I'm really good at this, even if I'm in a different country. And that has helped me scale in my sales career. Nothing's easy, no jobs are easy. Sales is challenging in different ways because you're trying to constantly adapt and learn to what's happening in the market, the competition, the constant changes in the customers' expectations, the demands. When you're even switching between different companies and learning different products, you're constantly going through a change. Even cultures within different companies are very different. You're also navigating to that. I think it starts to get much more interesting when you go up in the leadership because when you are as an independent salesperson, you're very focused on achieving your own number. It's more of a solo journey. You are interacting more with the customer, less internally. But as you grow up in sales leadership roles, you play a much more bigger role. You sort of are the middle person in between the top management or board and your team. So in that case, if the company or organization has a good onboarding induction program, then it's helpful. If they are not, then you're left to figuring out things by yourself. I was lucky because I had some really good leadership to help me. And I
Mhm.
learned a lot through those experiences, particularly if I had to put together a strategy for sales. What is going to be my sales target for next year? How am I going to transcend that to the team? Again, studying my own business, understanding what are the overall business goals. What is the board talking about? What is their vision? Because first thing that comes as a download from top leadership is the future, is the vision. And you need to have your cash flows, you need to have your revenue coming in, you need to hit your EBITDA. And for that, sales plays a very crucial role more than any other function. I mean, other than finance, because you got to be in the forefront, you got to be holding the steering wheel, navigating, directing the team. That's where drafting a right strategy of what this means, having the 360-degree view of the business plays a very different role. So in that time, you're not just that individual sales performer, you're much more evolved. So that education, wearing that wheel, embracing those new roles is a different challenge, which I think worked really well for me. So after having all of the grounded experience of individual roles, team leader, then further leadership roles, I think all of that has helped me, groomed me to be who I am today. And that's what I take forward when I'm coaching, mentoring my clients or the CEOs or the sales teams when I'm doing the upskilling. I just don't bring, just strategies or frameworks to help you achieve your sales numbers, but much more grounded knowledge, experience, expertise, where I've been in the trenches, I've done it myself, I have seen those real challenges myself. I unpack them with a solution centric mindset where it's not just about strategy, it's about playing with people's emotions, understanding how to help, let's say, an account manager transition into a sales leader, what that involves, what is the business looking at, how are the boards looking at a business, their expectations from the sales team, and so on. That's a very long answer to your question.
Oh, I was enjoying it so much. And I think what I decoded from what you were just saying is obviously success is not linear. It's actually your identity that's transforming along the journey because you obviously were involved in all these roles and all these stations that you were in, whether it's team leaders, global, and having people that were also answering and reporting to you, and you were doing the same reporting as well, only to be taken into a whole different country with a whole different expectation. Yes, maybe they still drive on the same side of the road, but the cars are different and it's a little bit quieter than the streets that you were probably used to. And that's a whole different identity that a lot of people don't quite understand. And above all, having to, I know this might not sound like a lot, but for somebody who was in high ranking positions to then go on and flip burgers, what did that do to you?
So when I moved to Australia and I had to live in Adelaide, a small city, so coming from a very busy place like Mumbai, adjusting in Adelaide was different. And one approach that I had to take was find any job because the local experience was important, but also was my cash flow, my bank balance to get some money coming in while I'm trying to reach out for jobs. So it was closer towards Christmas. I stripped down on my resume like any other migrant who goes job hunting. I did that, went dropping my resume, and the job that I got called for was in Oporto selling burgers. Well, I was excited because for me, I was earning dollars the first time, and I had my 2.5-year-old son. I had to leave him back in India. My husband was back in India. It was just me here. So it was very challenging just because you're by yourself trying to create a new identity. You had to learn a lot of things, but also compromise. Try and be flexible with a heavy heart and a stone on your heart, actually, to be without family, but just telling people you're really good at something. You should be in the corporates, being in a sales role, but here you are trying to explain every other person that you need a job. So, anyways, the good thing about that job was I was in this food court where I was selling burgers. It gave me a great experience in terms of interacting with people, learning a lot of Australian slangs, also correcting myself. I think that gave me a lot of joy with burgers, but also on the sidelines, it gave me an opportunity to see world a bit differently. Because
Mm.
normally, when you are into something, you have a vision, you tend to manifest and you want to kind of keep going in that rhythm. And suddenly you have to take a bit of a dent in your career. It may not be exactly what you thought, what you wanted, but I have embraced that beautifully because
Mm.
it gave me a chance to see things differently, to, probably it helped me a lot to embrace and assimilate in the mainstream Australia. And I think that is very important to exactly understand how people behave, how they think. If you're just going to move from a country straight into a metropolitan city and just stick to a community, then you have not embraced this country. For me, it gave me a chance to get much more closer to how people in different parts of Australia were. And I'm so grateful and thankful because that's what you need to know in sales. You need to connect, you need to know how other people think, what are their ambitions, what is it that they love, what is it that they hate. From a different lens. So that experience was amazing. Plus, I got to eat a lot of free burgers thanks to the job.
I can
It's
imagine.
prosper.
Obviously, you did mention you had a 2.5-old son at that time. I mean, when things were not looking up, you would have maybe thought maybe it's better to go back. Did that thought ever cross your mind at all, or?
I am an extremely positive person who meditates every day for the last 18, 19 years. But yes, I did came across that thought. I was returning back from that Oporto's job, and those were probably 8 months in to Australia. I was applying jobs left, right, center, getting rejections, not getting interviews. And then again, there's a pressure of how far can I stretch this? But also trying to say, okay, no, I'm going to give it another day. And while I was returning back, I met with an accident. And I had this probably a very decent, poor looking car that I could afford at that time. I'd crashed into a really massive, fancy car. At that point, I felt that's it, that's the end. Now it's time to pack bags. Because when I saw that car, I felt, okay, how am I going to afford this expense? Okay. And the first thought came to my mind is, how much do I actually have in my bank account? Will I be able to afford all of that? Will I be able to buy tickets? Because by then, my husband and son had moved to Australia. My husband was working in the petrol pumps, petrol stations. And that's another story. He was vice president in a bank, and again, a bit more similar story like me. And we both were trying to make our ends meet, yet find jobs. So we were at a point where I was like, I think that's it. I'm going to pack my bags. And that was the lowest point.
Mm.
Okay. But I had a friend who came to help me, went home. My son was having high temperature. I think that was the lowest point of my life where everything was going against me and I had to hold the bull by the horns by some ways. At least I had to spend a day and figure out what am I going to do the next day. And I said to myself, okay, maybe another day or two. I'll just push. I'll just push. That week, I ended up with 3 interview calls and I landed with my first corporate job in Australia the next week.
You see, When I hear stories like that, Dipti, I just think to myself, no matter what it is that you're going through, just pay close attention to what is happening, because one day you actually might have a good story to tell. I mean, you just did tell that on the Online Prosperity Show, so I'm really excited. But now you are actually helping CEOs build predictable revenue pipelines, and obviously you're helping other people now see success in their businesses. So tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, and who do you actually help?
So at Sales Pandit Consulting, which is my Melbourne-based consulting business, we work with businesses who have some level of stagnancy in sales. Now, these businesses are selling into what we call as B2B or enterprise customers, and they would be doing really well so far, but they have come to a stage where the CEO feels that the targets are not being met and there's something going wrong. We need to fix it. So I come in as a sales doctor to do a diagnostic, to run the scans, to do the health checkup. I provide a report that tells what's working, what isn't. And then I give them a roadmap to tell what they need to stop doing, what they need to start doing, and what they need to continue doing. Not just that, I also help them fix those problems. So typically what I call as a sales transformation in these businesses. So that's my area of specialization, which I've built over the last many years working and helping many medium-sized businesses. I work purely in Australian businesses. Now, while I'm working, what this actually means is with the fixes, it could be either the processes need a change. It could be that the sales leader needs a coaching, the sales team needs sales training. We might need to do some restructure. We might need to change the thought process entirely. We might need to look at what is the sales strategy? Which segments are they selling? Do you need to revise your go-to-market strategy? So I work alongside with sales leaders, CEOs, and the marketing teams as well. In addition to that, I do corporate training for sales teams because upskilling is a big area. And as I mentioned before, we don't have formal education. People who move in sales are because of the passion. And when you can give them the right coaching, mentoring, the right tools, your productivity goes really up. Today, if you look at the statistics, only 28% of salespeople actually get closer towards achieving the target. And only 7% of them actually hit the target. So that ratio is very less. Secondly, around 25% of the time used by a salesperson only goes into selling. The rest of the 75% time, they are either trying to figure out or they're doing some admin work. Okay, so there's a whole lot of productivity loss. So those are the problems that I fix with these through my services.
Absolutely. So, from my understanding, you just don't help them build these sales systems. You actually rebuild the confidence behind the person that's leading them. And I feel like that's even much more than just giving them a bunch of reports and, sales strategies and things of that nature, right? Because once you've got the confidence, then you can actually go in and lead your teams. Now, the people that you end up working with, what's a big sort of misconception about sales that they usually have that they then unlearn when they come to you?
I think the one thing that comes across very consistently is when your sales numbers are not happening, the business leaders or CEOs tend to look at the people. They tend to look at the sales leaders. So, you know what, you want to turn the heads, you want to replace them. But that's not necessarily the problem. It could be far deeper. Okay, it's the iceberg underneath what is not on the surface. And there could be cultural issues, there would be process issues. A typical problem that you would see in Australia is a lot of businesses were started by founders, like two, three people building a business which has scaled, they have had tremendous success. But no one has actually sat to write down those processes, to really write down the documents, to look at what's happening, what is it that needs to happen, and how do we go about it. To give you a classic example, Prosper, I was working with a software business last year. And they were this typical customer, started 25 years ago, three people business. Today, after 25 years, they still have retained the same sales head, the person because of the knowledge and experience he brings. Today, they are a $10 million business. They have 50 people in the company. But they have been taken over by a large PE business. Okay. And the challenge is that their sales cycle takes 12 months. So when I did a deep dive review and tried to assess what's going wrong, I found so many loopholes, which was not visible to the naked eyes of this team because they were doing this day in, day out. They really didn't see that as a problem. And when we fixed this, their sales cycle has dropped from 12 months to 2 months. The other
Wow.
area, what was interesting is, they didn't really design a strategy. They were just going with the flow. There are these two, three BDMs doing the same thing over the last few years. They had a target which they think they could achieve, and they were meeting the target. So they were feeling quite okay. But what they were actually doing was limiting themselves. So through my diagnosis, there was one thing that they mentioned to me was, oh, Dipti, we are selling into this particular segment and we are focused on this one. Or 70% of our revenue comes from this segment and all our energy and all activities are aimed towards this. Now, when I pulled the reports and I did the diagnosis, when I showed them that over the last 3 years, you are not selling, you're not getting 70% of revenue, you're actually getting only 23% of your revenue. So this
Mm.
is what happens in business. You're not looking deep into your reports, your statistics, your analysis to get a clear picture. You're working on things based on your whims. You're just winging things. You're having a notion in your head. That's what you're relaying to the team, and they're believing that. So those are myths. What you really need to do is have robust processes, cadences in the team. For example, if you're having a sales meeting, are you having the right CRM? Are you having the right reporting? Are you holding people accountable? Do you have the right KPIs, KRAs? If you're not having that, then you're just busy. And busyness makes you feel you're doing a lot of things. That busyness needs to be productive. That busyness should explain, do you really need 10 people in the sales team or do you need four? Because there's so much that can be done just by fixing some of these elements, your reporting, your structure, your cadences, your KPIs, even the internal processes. Sometimes, a client has to talk to 10 people to get to from A to Z. But in all honesty, if you can automate a few things, you don't need those steps. You need minimal touch points. Today, in the world of AI, customer is way more informed, way more educated. They are having a lot of information in hand. So you cannot live on your old processes and old ways of working. You have to adopt to modern selling. And that's what I exactly do with these businesses. So to go back to that example, this is the transformation I worked with this team, and that's the change report. It took me decently 6 months because there was a whole lot of shift. We had to do top, down, left, right, center. But the good thing was the team was ready because they knew where they're heading to and they were ready to make the change happen.
Absolutely. And that's quite powerful because if you can lower the sales cycle from 12 to 2, can you imagine how many deals can be done? And I can understand so many people within a business, they always would say, oh, it's always been done like that. So there's
Yeah.
no need for you to fix anything because if it's not broken, don't fix it. And that is, so much revenue, time, money, and effort that is being wasted and lost without them
Oh,
fixing
absolutely.
that.
See, other thing also what I see businesses focus on is they go and focus on getting new clients, new customers, new logos. You have an existing portfolio. If you can smartly get the right tapping into the opportunities, you can easily bring in another 25% of revenue. Maybe just hire an account manager or just reshift the process in such a way that you drive conversations with existing customers. A lot can be achieved, to be honest.
Absolutely. So I've noticed that if you become a sales pandit, you don't just get sales scripts, you don't just get templates or generic advice. You actually get a clear roadmap of things that you need to stop, things that you need to start, and then continue because so many people are clueless. They don't have that sort of clarity. And if you don't have clarity, you don't have a predictable pipeline. And I think that whatever got you to the level you are now with the tools and systems and processes that are now available, like you keep mentioning AI, it's the right time to reach out to somebody like yourself. Now, Dipti, if somebody's watching this and they're really sitting at the edge of their seat and they're thinking, wait a minute, I've been doing 12-month sales cycles, and if you can turn it down to 2, I want some of that that you are selling. Where can people go to on the internet to find out more about how they can be helped by you or learn a little bit more about your processes and the way you work?
I can my LinkedIn if you just want to have a quick chat with me. That's my LinkedIn at Dipti Pandit, Dipti Pandit. My website has the information as well, which is salespundit.com.au, salespundit.com.au. I'm always available for a quick chat. Someone wants to quickly book in a meeting, just to kind of have a bit of a brainstorm or just chat to see if this is the pathway they are looking at or not. That information is available both on my website and my LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, check the show notes for those links. I'll make sure that they are in there and you can connect directly
Yeah, and
with.
also a quick note, Prosper, what I also offer is a quick health check. So if someone just wants to have a health check, there is a tool on my website. I'll highly encourage your listeners to go onto that tool. It's a quick form they can fill in, and then I can run a quick diagnosis. It's a quick 30-minute uh, activity. They fill in the form, and I can just run past, give them some insight. This is complimentary. It's a quick 30-minute discussion. Doesn't mean that there is an obligation or they have to sign up for anything. This is just for those who want to do a quick check without really committing to anything.
Absolutely. Now, here's my direct ask of you that is watching or listening this right now. If you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things in business, but your revenue still feels unpredictable, I encourage you to go check out that health check because you're not fooling anyone. The more you continue doing things that no longer fit the journey or the state at which you're only, spraying and praying, and it's not going to be helping your business grow in the way that you have wanted it to. So thank you so much, Dipti, for opening up your world to us like that. And speaking of your world, I mean, you've taken us from where it all started to where it is right now, and obviously a little bit about how you're helping people. What's next? What can we expect from you that you're working on right now?
There is a lot that I'm not someone who can keep quiet. My brain runs really, really fast. Look, what I've also noticed, Prosper, is a lot of founders reaching out to me, asking for help. So I have been doing some mentoring coaching. And based from that experience, we have built a program for founders who are selling into B2B, which we call as Revenue Ready 90. So over 90 days, what they have is a friend, mentor, coach along with them. We will actively work in their business, help them identify where the challenges are, fix their sales pitch, fix their CRM, actually be part of their client calls, shadow them. And the idea is that they build a strong funnel and the pipeline. So if someone is at a 6-figure annual revenue, you will have a roadmap to go to 7-figure in 12 months. So our next cohort starts on 13th of May. We have just one seat left, but that's a program we will be running again in the last quarter as well.
And thank you so much for that invitation. And I think with what you have shared with us, people will definitely be beating a path to your online links so that they can check out what else you can do. Now, Dipti, I speak to a lot of people on these conversations, and I can safely say that your life story and your experience have so much value for any CEO that's really looking to grow their business. Not only are you helping them with their sales systems, processes, but you're also helping them with the actual insight and knowledge that you have gathered, not from, like you say, any formal education, but this has been what life has dealt to you, and you've used all of that and you've packaged it into something that people can actually create businesses that are profitable and enjoyable. So I can't thank you for the time that we spent on the call today.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Prosper. That is so well worded. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. It's been exciting conversations. I'm sure we can go on and on and on. Thank you for asking me some really nice questions and picking my brains right deep into my life.
Absolutely. Well, this has been powerful on my end. I mean, you went from selling burgers to now helping CEOs confidently lead revenue growth, and you are doing your part in making sure that Australia's GDP continues to be on the up and up. So, I mean, your journey is just proof that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about reinventing who you become in the process. And so many people don't pay attention to all of that that's happening. They're just in fetal position, just saying, woe is me, but you've actually utilized all of that. So thank you so much. And for everybody that's watching this right now, if today's conversation just made you reflect on maybe your own journey and maybe your own confidence or your own consistency, or above all, the revenue of your business, I encourage you not to keep this to yourself. Share this with somebody who's maybe building something, but might just need that sort of self-belief in themselves, that clarity, or that a little push. Or if you're in a sales team, send this to your leaders, because they might actually have the opportunity to then contact Dipti in order for them to actually elevate, your organization. And guess what that does? It helps you keep your job, because if the sales keep coming in, then your relevance and you are needed through and through. So your call to action with this particular show is just stop guessing and start building a revenue stream that actually works. And I think Dipti has shown us what's possible, and now it's your move. I don't know what you're going to do with this information, but bye for now.